Hello and welcome to More Tea Minister. My name is Ian. Today we are looking at another tea from Yushan, or two teas. They're both winter harvest, winter 2025. One has been charcoal roasted and the other has not been roasted, or at least not charcoal roasted. As I say, they're both a winter harvest. They're both from the same farm and the same season. So what's quite interesting here is that not only do we get to consider how the terroir of Yushan, a different part of Yushan from our previous video, affects the tea, it affects the cultivar. We also get to see what charcoal roasting contributes to the flavour profile as well. Interestingly, the vendor Beautiful Taiwan Tea suggests that, how can I put this, to use an English phrase, what you gain on the swings, you lose on the roundabouts. In other words, the charcoal roasting is going to add something, but you're going to forego some other aspects of the flavour profile in order to get to the benefits of the charcoal roasting. So it'll be interesting to see what those are. So just to take a quick look, in my left hand is the Yushan High Mountain Oolong from Beautiful Taiwan Tea, and in my right hand it's the same tea, but it's the charcoal roasted version. So what we're going to do is we're not going to look at the packaging, because if I do that, it's upside down, granted. If I do that, or back to front, that's the only information this packaging can give. So all we're going to do is go straight to look at the tea leaves and then have our Western brewing and then our two Gongfu sessions. So let's make a start. Here we are looking at the Yushan High Mountain Oolong tea from Beautiful Taiwan Tea. This is a winter harvest, but it is the version that isn't charcoal roasted. The smell of the leaves has a fruity component. It's backed up by a kind of cereal, slightly vegetal note. It's still pretty sweet. The tea material itself is pretty consistent in size, averaging, I would say, about 3 or 4 millimeters, and it's pretty consistent in colour. The stalk material is once again quite prominent, and that's accounting for the majority of the paler material in the tea, although there are, of course, some slight green edges to the tea beads as well. So let's take a look at the charcoal roasted version. This is the tea material for Beautiful Taiwan Tea. It's their Yushan charcoal roasted oolong, and that definitely comes through in the fragrance of the tea, which does have a strong roasted, almost slightly smoky note. The tea material itself, pretty consistent. Some of it's down to about 2 millimeters, but I would say it's averaging 3 or 4, and that's pretty consistent across the board. The material itself, you can tell it's been charcoal roasted. It's very, very dark. I'm not seeing any green material, not even on the stalks. They're kind of noticeable because they become a light brown rather than green. Other than that, pretty consistent, an intriguing smell, and I'm looking forward to trying these teas. Hello and welcome to the next part of our video, which is our Western/Teapot review of our two teas for today. A reminder, they are from Beautiful Taiwan Tea, and it is their Yushan High Mountain Oolong. And we have a charcoal roasted version and then a version that isn't charcoal roasted. On my left, you can probably tell by the colour even from here. On my left is the non-charcoal roasted, and on my right is the charcoal roasted. The inner two are the first steeps, and the outer two are the second steeps. And the brewing parameters are the same: 95 degrees centigrade, 3.5 grams of tea, 150 mils of water for 3.5 minutes. Both teas, both steeps. So let's make a start by looking at the colour. The most obvious is going to be the difference between the roasted and the unroasted. The unroasted is almost a white tea colour, maybe a hint of green thrown in actually, and the roasted, that's a lovely brass colour, maybe a dark kind of brass colour, I think so. Probably looks more like bronze from where you're seeing it. And if we turn to the second steeps, I would say actually the unroasted has become a little more intense in colour. There's more green, and the roasted, I would say, has lost a little colour. Let's do them side by side. This is the first steep, this is the second. Actually, not far off. In case you're wondering why I seem to be veering off to one side, I am actually recording this with my phone upside down so that it can charge, which means that the phone is looking at me, if I can put it that way, a different way around to normal, but I haven't lost the plot any more than normal. Let's turn to the aroma. Let's try the charcoal roasted. There's something fruit or floral. There's certainly something fresh in there, something creamy. Very sweet. When it was still hot, there was a really strong kind of volatile note as well. The second steeping, I suppose because it might be warmer, has still got that strong volatile estery quality. Very, very potent. Now let's turn to the roasted. It's got those lovely, I can only think of them in terms of licorice, those notes that come out after a heavy roasting. There's kind of licorice, aniseed, and a kind of baseline sweetness, plus some of that same volatiles are coming out as well. Much the same on the second steeping, but toned down. You just get more of the I don't want to say rougher, but more of the pronounced roasted smoky element. Let's put it that way. So let's start by tasting the unroasted. The unroasted first steep, that seems a natural starting point. Much the same. There's something in there. You might have all three of the Fs. And that's what's coming through. That flavour isn't dropping off. That was a good shout. Oh, if it is, it's only just. It's light-bodied, but it's got everything there. It's got fresh, lots of fresh. And something, those volatiles have cooled down and they've turned into a particular flavour profile that I can't put my finger on. It's hard to pin it down. It's certainly lingering and it's lovely, but it's not a fruit and it's not floral, but there is something there which is really standing out, very volatile, and that isn't a straightforward fruit or floral. Right, let's try the second steep, see if that's either brought that to the fore or maybe diminished it. No, it's perked it up. Perhaps because it's still warmer. Yeah, it's so powerful. Very welcome, but it's so powerful. It's almost got that bitter tang of oversteeping, but there is no oversteeping at all. I don't know what it is, but it's mouth-filling. If it was any stronger, it would be unpleasant, but at the minute, it's not. It's just something. I really am struggling to pin it down. It's a volatile smell. It's at the base for a perfume or something like that. Very, very interesting. Right. There is some of the similar in the roasted, the charcoal roasted actually. But it's got on the scent all of those extra flavours that I really enjoy in charcoal roasting. Yeah, the charcoal roasted notes, the sort of, as I say, the aniseed, the licorice, plus that volatile combination. It's almost like a wine. Maybe that's what it is. It's like raw alcohol, which I know sounds odd, but it's the only way I can describe it. Let's try that with the second steep. That aspect of it has receded into the background, as the smell implied, and you're just getting the much rougher smoke in the forefront. It's not unpleasant, but you've got to like it. But you have to like it to enjoy that much. There's a lot of that smoke there. Okay, so that's an interesting showing. There is something moving across, something that maybe with the tweaking resolves into a fruit or a floral, but it's not either. It's almost raw alcohol. And it's very volatile, lots of freshness, lots of the licorice and aniseed in the first steep, but light body on both, interestingly. So let's see what Gongfu does for this tea. I'd be really curious. I don't want too much of that volatile note. We'll see how that comes across. So first of all, we're going to do a Gongfu for the non-charcoal roasted, and then we'll conclude the video with a Gongfu for the charcoal roasted. So let's move on to the first of those. See you in a mo. Hello and welcome to the first of our Gongfu sessions for this video. We are going to review the unroasted, the non-charcoal roasted version of this tea, which is the Yushan Oolong, High Mountain Oolong from beautiful Taiwan tea. The parameters are going to be relatively familiar and straightforward. The water's at 95 degrees centigrade. We're going to use 3 grams of tea and it'll be 50 mils of water per steeping, although we might actually start at a slightly smaller amount if we can manage, just to intensify the flavour of that first steeping. To help me, rather than to add anything to the protocol, I'm using my stopwatch and a notepad so I know how long each steeping is. So everything's been pre-warmed. I've got a water jug. You might just be able to see the handle off to one side. Let's begin. That's the wastewater jug. That's what I was trying to say. So the last Yushan video, or the previous, we used 40 mils to start with because the leaves don't take up much room at this point. So we might do that again, actually, just to try and get a stronger sense of what that initial flavour is. So that's 40. Plenty of moving about, but not much popping or air bubbles being released. So that, from the Western brewing, this really quite potent volatile note, and it is in both, and it's not on the utensils. It's not like washing up liquid or something, because I could smell it on the leaves once they were wet. There's a really potent kind of volatile component within the leaf. And if it resolved into a fruit or a flower, it would be very interesting, but as it stands, it's just different. Okay, we're coming up to a minute. The leaves haven't really unfurled, but the very prominent stalks have, which is not really a surprise. That's a minute. Nothing on the lid. We're going to take that to a minute 10. Okay. We're being bold and decisive here. I'm not sure that's a good idea, but we are. Something vegetal and that volatile note's there already. Don't know what it is. Right. Actually, on the wet leaf, it comes across like gooseberries. Something slightly tart and fruity at the same time. The stalk material has definitely, dropping it again, the stalk material has started to hydrate. The tea beads have not. Pretty much what we'd come to expect. Colour-wise, a very straightforward white tea silvery colour. Yeah, on the on the jug, it comes across as a tart fruit with some cream behind it. Okay. I hope this isn't wishful thinking, but that's how it's coming across. Okay. So I just take a note before I forget. Okay. Yeah, it comes across as a very tart fruit. So it's got a sweet edge and some tartness to it. Yeah, that makes more sense than this sort of standalone kind of volatile chemical. Note. Okay. Let's move on to our second steeping. I think we can, apart from the size of the stalks, we could probably do the same again, and I think we might. No, I've got to go to 50, so we're back up to 50. But at least we know. Oops, put that down. Otherwise, the stalks are already jumbling up how much room there is in there. Okay. Yeah, that tart fruit is a very potent flavour. It's already lingering. Okay, we're coming up to 40. We'll take a look. If it's anything like the other Yushan video, the stalk hydrating, when there's so much stalk, is starting to pull open the beads even when the leaves aren't rehydrated, which you would think would actually increase hydration or rehydration. Yeah, tart fruit. I'm glad it's resolved itself into something. Minute 10. Now, definitely more colour. That's moved into... It's, as with the other Yushan, it's added some green, some very pale green to that silver, that white tea silvery colour. Yeah, it's much more obviously a cat. Do you know? Because there's a slight vegetal note and some cream, it comes across more as a floral than a fruit. That would make sense. There's a lot of flowers that are sweet, but they've got well, just a very floral note to them. That doesn't have to be sweet, and that's what this is coming across as. Yeah, there's not a lot of sweetness on the cup. That's usually a giveaway. There's not a lot of sweetness on the taste. The body is up. There's cream. And that volatile component has increased as well. It's in danger of actually taking over. Not quite there, but we're getting there. That's probably about 60. I don't want to jump the gun, but I may have to cut this short if that's going to intensify, because it's going to just take over, and on its own, it's not tremendously pleasant. I don't know what's happening. Then we'll move on to the charcoal roasted if we need to. 45. You see there, it comes back to being something like a tart stewed fruit. That I can appreciate. It's just when it's this blast of sort of a very volatile component that it's hard to cope with. Now, that's slightly more water, so we may take that to 1:15, and then we'll see where we are. Tart fruit, which is a good thing. Let's take a look at some of these. Yeah, look at that. That's really done a good job of hydrating. There's some little nibble, I don't know if that's a nibble mark or just damage to the leaf, but I'm wondering if the bugs have been at these leaves. This one's got a couple of holes as well. Well, those have certainly had a good chance to steep. The leaves are pretty tender. Okay. Now we've moved definitely into greeny yellow and away from the pure silver. Yeah, florals. And some vegetal. Some sweetness has come back into the cup. That's almost oversteeped, which is my fault, nothing to do with the tea. Almost. Body is medium. It's smoothed out a bit. And the volatiles have become a kind of floral note in the background. Okay. I didn't think the leaves would unfurl that much or rehydrate. So yeah, I can understand that. I can understand that being too much. So let's do one last steep. We'll bring it right back, and we'll put in more water so everything is covered. Right, we're at 90. Helps to put the lid on, doesn't it? So that will take just a touch longer because we are using more water, but we will have it nowhere near 1:15. I'm wondering whether something like a straight at minute might be enough. Let's try 40, in fact. Nothing yet. Yeah, we're going to bring that in at 55. Longer than I would otherwise do for such thoroughly hydrated leaves, but there's a lot more water. Something perfumey, that's about as much as I could say. Yeah, look how tender those leaves are. Everything's rehydrated. Lovely. Have we had enough water or too much? Well, the colour is green. Pretty conclusively green, almost as if any yellow has been stripped out. Oh, wow. That's very heady and perfume in a good way, not just pure volatiles. And some vegetal, touch of cream again. I keep expecting a touch more cream with it being a Chin Chin cultivar, but I wasn't expecting so much pure sort of volatile chemicals. Light to medium body. Sweet, yeah, everything's now in balance, I would say. Yeah. Back to being sweet, slightly heady, perfumey note. The volatiles aren't just in the face. Okay, so that's the sweet spot. Okay. And the sort of aftertaste And up in the sinuses is much more of something fresh, a bit of cream, a bit of body, a bit of floral perfume. Yeah, floral perfume. It's not, I'm not in a rose garden, but that's how the brain is translating this sort of medley of volatile notes. It's saying florals. I suppose that's always the case. Okay, so that's our Gongfu. I would say the Gongfu has been kinder to that tea than the Western because the volatiles were really just taking over. And even the fact the first two steepings here, I might even counsel not bothering. Just stick to the third and fourth steepings, or if you've got the knack, find some way to get past that. But you really don't want that just great mass of volatiles, unless you're going to dilute it, in which case you might be, or shorter time, something that allows the palate to resolve it. That's what you need to do. So let's move on to our second Gongfu for the charcoal. See you in a moment. Hello and welcome to the final part of our video, which is our second Gongfu session to review the charcoal roasted version of this tea. Now we're going to have an interesting balance here. I was just rehearsing in my mind what we might be doing here, what our strategy is. We really don't want too much of that volatile, and I'm thinking diluting the tea, as in using a bit more water than we might normally do, might be the best bet. However, we don't want to lose the charcoal aspect. So what we might do is just keep the steeping times shorter, but have a few of those, and let's see if that helps us. So everything's been pre-warmed. Wastewater jug is over there. 3 grams of tea, 95 degrees centigrade. Let's see what we can do. So we might just bring this in at 30, and as I say, might seem a bit over the top, but I'm wondering whether we can just get the good stuff. Let's get it back up to 50. Get the good stuff without those volatiles coming to the fore. So we'll do 45. We'll check in at 30, and we'll bring this in at 45 and just go up in 5 seconds, I think. Some slight smokiness there, that's good. As I say, we're just going to do 45, irrespective. Very peely wally. There's a good Scottish turn of phrase, peely wally. Hopefully you can guess that means, well, pallid, weak, pale. But that's only to be expected. Smell, let's do the smell. Some hint of the, not pure smoke, that's good. Some of the roasted elements are coming out already. I'm not picking up those volatiles. The colour is almost peach, actually. Yeah, it's a nice colour. It's almost a peach colour. Okay, let's pour some of that out. And sorry for the scraping sound. Unsurprised, actually, those leaves are more tender than I thought for 45 seconds. So let's see how this comes out. Bit of sweetness and roasted notes on the cup. Do you know, that's light to medium already. That's very pleasant. The flavour's dropping off slightly, but it's got all of the good stuff, just slightly milder. That's really good. That's a good showing. Not getting any kind of creaminess, but the body is pretty good. And it's the smell. We're already getting the roasted notes here. Not quite intense enough to pick up the kind of licorice or aniseed or whatever else your palate might pick up. But let's stick to 50 again. All right. and we'll come in at 50. I do worry anybody watching me take all these notes, it's like somebody doing accountancy. Now, unlike this, accountancy I appreciate is important, but it's not a spectator sport, put it that way. No shade being cast on any accountants who watch this. We all need all the help we can get sometimes. So we're coming up to 45, we'll just push that to 50. And maybe keep it at that. That colour's intensified slightly. That's much deeper. That's much more of the complex roasted notes. The leaves are halfway tender. That's really impressive. You can maybe see how much of the bottom of that guy when they're filling up. Okay. Colour-wise, much more intense. Brass, definitely. In fact, I would say slightly darker, almost copper. Creamy, roasted, smoky. If that picked up the vegetal note, a vegetal note, it would be, at that point, it would be similar to the Eco-Char one, but without the... That one was... Well, let's give this one more of a chance, to be fair. I am keeping these at short steepings. I was going to say, as of yet, it's not kind of really differentiating those roasting notes, but it may on the taste. Yeah, they're all coming through in the cup. Now, see, I spoke too soon. It's dropping off slightly, but it's starting to, the smoke is good, but it's starting to differentiate and we're getting quite a bit of smoke. Very nice. It's starting to give us something vegetal as well. The aniseed, I would say, rather than that kind of potent licorice, but we're getting there. This is definitely the way with this one. I might keep it at 50. I might even bring it back to 45. It's steeping so well. Will 50 mils of water do, or do we need more? Well, it's managing for this one. We'll check at 30, and maybe if we need to do, we'll bring this in at 45. I can't actually see the camera here, so I hope I'm not being phased out. There's a sunbeam, and usually this part of the world bouncing off the tablecloth in front of me, and I can't see a great deal. So we're coming in for 30. Yeah, I'm kind of getting a roasted vegetable note. I think 45 might actually do. Yeah, this is 45. Yeah, roasted veg. The leaves are still leathery, but they're a lot more tender, which does make me think that a lot of what looks like room for steeping might just be how the leaves have now how the leaves are after they've been processed. Okay, colour-wise, oh, that's picked up some even more colour. We're definitely getting into the realm of copper. Are we still in the copper? Very intense copper colour if it is. Yeah, roasted veg, very sweet. That's good. And none of the volatiles. I don't know what's different. I don't know if we're just not heating this enough to bring them out. Definitely something to watch for. Sweet and smoky, that's a lovely combination. and some body, still just under medium. Maybe 50. It's coming across as a bit too thin. How low can I keep the water? Let's get the water to 50 again. Let's not mess around with that. Let's do that at 50. And yeah, that smoke is pretty potent. Unfortunately, it's trying to trick the brain into saying, oh, that's the over-drying tannic taste. It's not. It's really not oversteeped. It's just there's a good deal of smokiness, but the Gongfu is kind of splitting it up. No, it definitely needs a bit longer. And 50. Okay. Colour-wise, it's pale now. We're definitely into a sort of reddish brass colour. A lot of sweetness there. Some sort of rich vegetable notes. Roasted vegetable notes, that is. And some smoke. Hopefully not too much smoke. I'd like to bring that back into balance. On the cup, very well balanced smoke, sweet, vegetable. That's kept the body just below medium. Flavour isn't dropping off, so that's a sweet spot in that respect. Smoke has receded, so we're getting a gentle roasted veg and some sweet. Yeah, that's good. The smokiness has come back into balance. It's just lingering. It kind of colours the whole thing. Okay. Well, that tea definitely behaves itself Gongfu-wise. Do you know, having just said that, the volatiles are just starting there, so we definitely want to keep the steeping times down. Right. What do we make about this tea? I think it needs Gongfu. Maybe someone with a wiser head knows what to do with a Western or Teapot brewing to keep those volatiles under control, but they were playing Merry Hob with a Western the way I was doing it. Don't know why. Even on the Gongfu for the unroasted, perhaps because those were long steeps. It was giving those volatiles a time to come forth. And by the time they'd been diluted, you could tell it was a kind of floral note, but you couldn't resolve it. It was just this overwhelming blast of something very volatile, not even like a fruit ester. You couldn't put a flavour to it, just a great mass of a volatile chemical. And it's just the nature of the tea. Just the nature of its growing conditions, just those particular circumstances. It's nothing foreign to the tea, and it's not a problem. You've just got to sort of roll with the punches. The charcoal one, because of those shorter steepings, reacted faster. In fact, they reacted better to Gongfu than they did to the Western, oddly enough, more readily. And that kept everything under control and got to the sweet spot pretty swiftly. Third and fourth steepings were very good. Although it was pretty rewarding right from the start. I would, if I had more of this tea and I had more time and the caffeine wasn't starting to take me over, I would redo that unroasted one just to keep the steeping shorter and therefore see if we can get what that tea is giving without that massive volatiles. Okay, very interesting. Definitely Gongfu friendly, at least with these brewing parameters. Let me put that in. Definitely worth exploring, and very definitely different to the previous Yushan. The green was very different to the Western, I beg your pardon, to the Winter 25 Yushan tea in our previous video, and the charcoal roasted was really adding something to it. So very interesting. Stick to the Gongfu, unless you're going to modulate it. Anyway, I hope this has been of some interest. I've really found it interesting and enjoyable. So all I can do now, all I wish to do, is to wish you happy steeping and say, God bless.